Recording, Barry.
Okay, I will call the May 13th regular board meeting of Lowell Light and Power to order. Charlie, if you would do roll call.
Chairperson Beecham.
Here.
Board Member Crawford. Here. Board Member Shrouden. Here. Board Member Cadwalder.
Here.
And Greg is
Currently
not here.
I would entertain a motion to excuse his absence.
He just that, but he's got a pretty nasty stomach bug.
Okay. So you
Move
will
to
not.
excuse Craig's absence.
Now support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the agenda. Agenda is gonna be pretty much as it is. After we do the safety moment, I'm gonna hijack the safety moment for a second. But I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So move. Now support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Approval of the minutes from the April 15th, 2025 board meeting. Entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Now support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Safety moment.
All right, so I'll do the safety moment and I'll let you hijack it. Just real, I'll be quick then. So the safety moment, I've got the safety moment today. It's on lawnmower safety and kids. And I thought it was appropriate. There's some interesting stats that I saw on here. Obviously, there's some pretty terrible stats on the left, but the two most 80% of injuries are with boys. And the two most common ages of injury are 3 and 16, which makes a lot of sense. 3, they're mobile and don't understand fear, like don't understand they should be fearful of lawnmower, don't understand the repercussions. And 16, they're at that age where they're getting more involved and more likely engaging, doing the lawn mowing, and it's resulting in injuries. So good to just keep in mind, when can kids mow? I'll be honest, I saw this, but personally, I'm not sure I agree. 12 with push mower, but it's really about can you do it safely? I like the train teams to operate the mower safely. Each property is different. Maybe on a flat piece of ground, it's safe, but my house, I'm not sure anybody's mowing. No 12-year-old push mow in my yard. But I think one of the keys there is wear eye protection, closed toe shoes, and PPE. Wear PPE. I know a lot of kids like to ride on lawnmowers, wildly dangerous, and then just things being ejected out of the chute. So I thought it was very much appropriate to try and touch on this. I know I've mowed my yard a couple times now. I'd rather have not, but it's part of the game. It grows, you've got it. So let's do it safely. I'll hand it over to you, Barry.
Okay, safety moment. Charlie and I, we were talking, and I just want to inform the board. After we did the pickup on street cleaning on Seguin, Alden Nash coming in, I talked to Charlie and everything. We're doing it at probably the busiest time of the day, and the traffic is just flying by. And we try to take as many safety precautions as possible. We even put a couple signs out that there's a cleanup crew and different things. But we're looking at, we still want to do it, but we're looking at changing a few things. One is we'll have a safety meeting before we, go out. And I'm as guilty because you find yourself walking with the traffic instead of against the traffic, picking things up. And as you're going, you just don't know. Somebody can slow down, the other vehicle doesn't see you that slowing down. And it's just, I would hate to ever have any kind of accident. We're trying to do a good thing. So we're gonna look at some different solutions, whether it's one is, we'll definitely talk about having a safety meeting before when we meet. We'll also, get a pattern which way we're going. We'll also, whether there's somebody that's right, we haven't explored everything. I just wanted the board to be aware of what we're thinking. Whether we have a pickup truck, one of our trucks with the flashers following behind. But one of the things that we really talk about is, it's been volunteer, but we're thinking of, when we pick that date, for the next one, do it from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning. Our office isn't open till 10. That allows people, and it's everybody that's been, now that the traffic lights and everything, you see what kind of traffic there is from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And we're right there, right in the middle of that. And, the last time I was not comfortable for the employees and the volunteers that are out there, from Lowell Light and Power. And maybe it's because you just hear of a semi that wasn't paying attention, at a construction site and plowed through and killed, it was another state, but 13 people. And, it's just, you would just hate, you'd have a hard time living with yourself if anybody in our company got hurt because of trying to do a good thing. And I'll let Charlie touch on that at all.
I appreciate that. I think, it's one of those things that I love that we do this. I love that it's volunteer. But the time that does work for our employees to volunteer happens to coincide with the busiest time. And I don't know if there's more traffic or less traffic than there used to be. But I've got a hard time believing it's less traffic. Lowell was growing. There's a lot of, I don't know how the lights, like I said, don't know how the lights change, but I'd like to work with Zach. The other thing I think is important to remember is we have a set of crew. We got guys that know all about setting up a job site, and they listen to, they attend safety meetings on how to protect employees as they work on the road. So like to get Zach's feedback, get the guys' feedback, what all can we do, whether it's, putting something between our employees and oncoming traffic, or whether it's a vehicle moving barricade. We don't want to create a more significant safety concern by trying to alleviate one. And I have a lot of faith in Zach and the guys who do this for a living to help us establish what the appropriate procedures are. So more to come, but I would agree that if the board is supportive, I'd like to move the time that we do this. And it does make sense to do when traffic is minimized. So I don't know exactly what that'll look like, but unfortunately, that probably means doing it during work hours. But it's 3 times a year. I believe we do it 3 or 4.
And it's basically about, an hour.
3 hours a year, 2,080 hours of work hours in a year. That's a very, very small percentage. And it's not like, it's not doing good for the community. We do a lot of things that are good for the community. So yes, I'm supportive and more to come.
Hey, are you guys seeing more trash, less trash, about the same amount? Because sometimes I look and it's pretty bad. Not going out of town because you guys take care of it, but others. So I'm just not sure if people are getting a habit of not doing it as much as they used to, or.
I think obviously the first year, or the first time of the year, because of because you haven't done it since fall, so you have all winter, but you also have that first time that you pick up, the grass is not growing up and everything, so you see more things. And we tend to, we try to, it's in somebody's front yard or whatever, we try to pick up anything that we see along, not just along, but in ways. And I think once we do that first cleanup, I think that's, and then it's less each time. But, you know, I love that we do it. I just want to make sure that we're, as safe as we possibly can. I know you can't plan for all idiots, but,
Or-
And for some of them,
so, anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. Moving on, public comment. There's no public here. We'll move on to action items.
all right, we'll start with the budget. So in the memo, I highlight just some changes, in the budget, but I thought we'd jump right down to the actual budget. Thought I'd just step through the budget a little bit. So starting overall, some big picture type of stuff, change between draft budget and final budget. Sorry, I got the wrong document. Overall decrease in sales revenue, overall decrease in purchase power expense, ultimately leads to a decrease in operating income and net income, and even a decrease in cash generated for capital budget. A lot of that was, I guess, to get into the details, but that's kind of high level. Again, the memo includes quite a few notes, but overall, starting with revenue, the decrease in revenue is tied very much to PCA, is tied to our power supply. So the reduction most of the reduction in our revenue is associated with a reduction in anticipated PCA revenue. Moving down to power supply, we'll hop around just a little bit. We'll do power supply and then we'll back up other stuff. So just some notes, overall reduction between the draft budget and final budget. Draft budget included a 23% increase in power supply over our current projected. That is down to just over a 17% increase, which is a significant increase, partially due to large bilateral purchases to offset Campbell shutting down. They're still going to, you'll notice the Campbell line item still has right up a little over $400,000 in expenses. Those are tied to decommissioning and remediation, so 0 kilowatt hours for that $400,000. So just a strict expense on that. There's a large increase in the energy services project. That jump is kind of midway through. Currently, we're projected to finish about $300,000. That number jumps almost $2 million next year. That's very much associated, almost exclusively associated with bilateral agreements to replace energy off of Campbell and half of Bell River with Bell River's down. You see an increase in solar, our solar projects. That is due to new projects coming on, expanding our renewable portfolio. And that's kind of those are some of the highlights on power supply. Happy to take any answers or questions on power supply, but a lot of the projects didn't have any movement in the model. And the other piece I should have highlighted is the deficient capacity charge. That's a large number, but way down from the draft budget. That was, Casey will touch on it, but that's an outcome of the MISO planning reserve auction and a long position in the summer months that is going to ultimately result in quite a bit of revenue for us to help offset some of our expenses. But that number does jump up still significantly. That over 1,000% increase really stands out. But that's tied to a lot of that's tied to a bilateral capacity agreement that we reached that to fill our short position. So we are going to have increased capacity expenses moving forward. especially as our Campbell resources retired and it's being replaced with other resources that just don't have the same capacity accreditation as Polk. Then just kind of touching on a few things here and there, the generation budget, really not a ton to say there, but that it's hard to notice, but the generation budget actually reflects a decrease in labor expenses. And that's to reflect Casey's expanded responsibilities as our system engineer. So Casey's going to be spending a little bit less time, and he probably disagrees with the term a little bit, but Casey's time is going to, we don't know exactly where it's going to land, but we obviously anticipate Casey's going to be more involved in the distribution side, providing that engineering role to the company-wide and to the distribution system. Distribution budget, distribution expenses is down. That's attributed to decrease in labor. This year was elevated because we had Ryan still on the payroll, and he's officially retired. So that's a position that won't be, it's not intended to be replaced. We also had an additional lineman for a couple months, few months this year. So those positions are not being replaced. We see a little bit of a decrease in incentive associated with distribution. Customer accounting / energy optimization. Again, the budget, the EO budget was pushed to $200,000. And that really was just to see, we're going to have additional touch points later in the year when we have a definitive path forward, and that in order to implement the state's new EWR program, there's going to have to be additional revenue. So we're going to have to look at rates, and we're going to have to look at offsetting some of those anticipated expenses. But other than that, that's the big piece there. Some other items in outside services, a couple things I wanted to really highlight. Outside services budget is, where are you at? I think Megan's got it highlighted. Not much change from the draft budget, but a fairly big change from our anticipated expenses and projected for this year. Big piece of that is working with GRP Engineering to update our system study and to develop a more detailed 5 to 6 year capital improvement plan. And the intention behind the 5-year capital improvement plan is that it's revisited on a 3-year basis. So you're always extending, obviously less certainty in years 4 and 5 of a 5-year plan, more certainty in years 1 and 2, and 3 is kind of the middle ground. But the thought is we'll implement a 5-year plan, gives us a good roadmap, but every 3 years we revisit it to establish a new 5-year plan. Obviously, the goal is you hope that what's in years 4 and 5 become most of what's in year 1 and 2, but things change and priorities change. It's not set in stone, but that's a large initiative that we have planned for this year. Also in the outside services is funds to partner with a communications company to, we brought Melissa on as our communications specialist, and one of the initiatives I'd like to tackle is updating a crisis communication plan. Heard a little bit about it in the morning at the MMEA meeting, but last fall at the MMEA meeting, Grand Haven did a presentation on their crisis communication plan and the company that they work with, and think mutual aid, but not from a line worker standpoint. Utilities supporting other utilities. They've got a great framework. We'd like to work with the communications company to really establish a relationship and to update that framework so that it's ready for us. Fortuitous timing for some utilities. I know Sturgis recently just got hit by a really difficult storm. I think they had customers out for extended period, 3, 4, 5 days. And I talked to their electric, I don't know exactly what his title is, the general manager, director of utilities. And he said that plan was invaluable to help navigate that and communicate with their customers. So that's a big initiative for this year, and those all fall in the outside services line item. One change from the draft budget, it's hard to notice, it's not necessarily apparent. We've removed a few things from the capital budget associated with the office and some sidewalk repairs, and ripping out some sidewalks. Had Mark take a look at that, and we can patch up some things. The bigger priority is gonna be taking a look at that building and working with a company to start evaluating what long-term needs to happen to our main office. It's an old building, it's about 100 years old. We want to look at some of the brickwork, the seals around windows, and just make sure that we have funds there available, and we can address that. Nice thing is, if you exclude power supply increases, the total increase for operating expenses is 2.9%. That's right in line with what I would hope for. I know 2 to 3% increase in expenses, 2 to 5% really isn't that bad. But a lot of our overall operating expenses are tied to the increase in our power supply. So it shows a 12.8% increase, but you back out the increases in power supply and you look at just our core. Other piece that's bad news, the budget does include a 10% estimate on increase to insurance. Yeah, we'd all be happy with 10%. We got numbers yesterday, and we're looking at somewhere between 15 and 18% increase on insurance. More to come on that. I was going to touch on, we're digging into that piece, but that is a reduction. One thing that it's kind of a unique situation. I've worked with the city manager, Mike Burns, on the city's pilot budget and their revenue budget. And I talked with the city council about it, but I knew that when we presented the draft budget, there was a pretty good chance that if we looked at what percentage of the pilot was tied to PCA, which is very much a very variable expense. If we can, if things like the capacity auction clear at a high price, if we can bring down our power supply cost, that's a major win for us, but it ultimately does result in reduction in the pilots of the city. So again, worked with city manager we worked together and collaborated on what an appropriate number would be for the city. So that there's a reduction of about 13,000 in the budget for pilot. That's very much associated with that PCA and also factors into the city's budget, because I think probably for the first time in a very long time, our budgeted pilot expense did not align with the city's budgeted revenue for pilot. And that was because we anticipated some potential movement and didn't want the city to count on money that may not actually show up. So,
well, I can say it's still a nice chunk of change if it comes to that reality.
And the majority of that is very much secure. Of the just under $500,000, I think about 60 of it was tied to revenue to pilot off of PCA. That's whole 60 is not going away. So we're looking at a piece of the overall pilot that is actually at risk of not materializing. And it's a good thing if it doesn't, because the residents will win if it doesn't.
And I don't know if the board knows it, it's like 10% of our budget,
Yeah,
just FYI.
it's about 10%, of the general fund over the city. All right, moving on. That's the operating budget. I'll pause here. Any questions?
I do want to, like, Charlie did come, gave us a 10,000-foot shot of what the budget is, kept it in layman's terms so people would understand it. I don't see why the budgets will not be approved after what we had 2 Mondays ago. So thanks, Charlie, for coming and presenting it. And there were a few questions, but nothing that you didn't answer.
It was a great engagement. I can talk about what we do all day. So I try to keep it to my little window. There's a lot of other pieces that you all have to consider. So I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
Moving on to the capital budget, not much movement here. Some of the dollar figures changed as far as projects. server replacement on the data center, access control at the substation are in that IT budget. Capital equipment, I believe, is up a little bit from, the draft budget. That's, associated with, Zach's done an awesome job really continuing to fine tune quotes and, it's been a big undertaking, to pull together the distribution projects. Voltage conversion projects, we're looking at James Street, and that includes Highland Hills, right? So James Street, Highland Hills area, it's kind of a bonus, voltage conversion project that was not included in the draft budget, but we were able to layer that in. And then West Main Street, clearing out, there's 9 small projects maybe, along West Main Street, but the big umbrella project is, doing all the work to complete voltage conversion so we can remove the line that runs right down Main Street from about the railroad tracks to McDonald's, to the trailer park there. So there should be, from the railroad tracks to the edge of town, the only poles on the road on West Main Street will be road crossings, and maybe a few scattered poles for lights until some things get buttoned up. But the bigger vision is to remove all that off of West Main Street. And in the process, there's quite a bit of voltage conversion that's going to be completed. And then there's a little bit of wrap up work as far as pulling some additional secondary feeds or not secondary, but alternative feeds at the dock addition. So there's just a lot of little projects that ultimately roll up into a very large, very complicated project. Underground projects, undergrounding project, this is just the area at Little G Drive. Again, Zach's done a phenomenal job pulling together a plan for that. Equipment replacement fund, this is this number is much bigger than the previous years, but there's $175,000 in there, or I forget now, off the top of my head, I have notes and I didn't bring them, but that $300,000 is split up into, it's $175,000 to go to the actual truck replacement fund that will ultimately flow into, or will support the purchase of a new digger truck. That's the last big piece of equipment we need to buy, or last really large piece of equipment. The other piece of that is $125,000 to start preparing for a software conversion project that we think will be in the neighborhood of $250,000 to $300,000 in total, and will really serve as I hope, the foundation of the office for the next 30 plus years. So facility projects, we talked about crack sealing the parking lot here. It's that time. Generation projects, Casey's got some distribution, electrical distribution projects and some PLC programming that he wants to tackle this year. And then we're also going to hit Stony Bluff Phase 6, which the board has approved the easement to get to. The city council has approved the easement to get to. They actually just received the counter signature from the developer, so that's ready to file with the county. And then the minor cap budget, we talk about this. We pinched this budget a little bit, knowing how busy the rest of the capital budget is. But we include this every year to tackle smaller projects, kind of like the project up Riverside, where it's not quite big enough to ever make it a capital project, but you want to make sure you have funds available. And then one of the other projects we're going to handle with that minor cap budget this year is reworking the electric to that feeds from. They've had some challenges this year, and we need to put some TLC into the service out there. One thing I do want to draw attention to is this is kind of abnormal, but the budget does show dipping into cash reserves by about $120,000. Tend to not try to dip into cash reserves. A lot of that is driven by the fact that we've been on a 4 to 5 year cash management plan. We've been about a year ahead of that plan quickly. And this current fiscal year, we're going to generate more cash for the cash reserves or for capital budget than we originally anticipated. And a lot of that was tied to recollection of working capital at MPPA and some other things. But One of the other things is we pulled we pulled $120,000 out of this year's capital budget that was going to be committed to minimizing runtime on the generators, but there's a lack of certainty in the rules that MISO is going to ultimately adopt. So we didn't think it was a prudent investment to move forward with that. Casey, am I missing anything there? Yeah. So that's the rationale behind proposing a budget that will eat some cash. So with that's what I have to say about the budget. Happy to answer questions. But that's where.
So I'm glad Jim's back, because I just had a couple of questions, because I think part of it probably falls on the city. So we're looking at repaving Riverside Drive in 26, correct?
Correct.
Is the city, are we looking at new lighting on Riverside Drive when that happens?
I don't think it's been brought up at.
Because the poles that are there, Zach can speak to them, some of so we removed. The only thing that's on Riverside Drive now is poles for lights, correct? I mean, we're not going.
Cable as well.
And cable. So everything else, has been redirected or whatever. Some of those poles, few of them, are in really sad shape. And I think that the city, at the time of doing that, I think Light Power and the city should, work together and look at lighting, what you might think of doing on Riverside Drive. And I'm just, again, it's hard because I live there, but some kind of, so you have the river, and we've tried reducing the amount of poles and stuff, and it would be attractive to put more of a decorative light up and down Riverside Drive.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, as well as north and south Hudson coming up from the bridge coming in town and going out of town too. Are you guys, the street is only gonna be repaved, it's not gonna be tore up. So is there any infrastructure, Light Power have to get in to accommodate that type of street lighting?
I'll just give you guys a little update on that.
Yep.
Rich and I have talked a few months ago about this, so this is on the radar.
Yeah, I mentioned.
The city knows about this, and these have all been talked about.
Okay.
Preliminary, but nothing's been close to set in stone.
Right.
So it's on the radar of the city.
Zach regularly talks with Rich about lighting, and it's gonna come up on West Main Street when we remove poles on West Main Street.
Yep.
It's something that as we, there's just numerous challenges. We've got a good relationship and we work well with the city but ultimately the street lighting assets are the city's asset. We
Right.
just we manage them and help maintain them. So that requires a good
Right.
level of collaboration, and Zach and Rich do a great job with that, but more to come.
Have we gotten any word on the forestry truck?
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be
That was
third
Yeah.
to fourth quarter of this calendar year, so it
Yeah.
should be coming in the second half of this year. I don't remember
I
what
thought it was like September, October.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
But we are well, that's a note that I didn't actually say, but the tool budget this year is inflated a little bit, because we are anticipating receiving that truck. And any new truck, you gotta have new stuff to go on it, or there's new needs, so, from a budget standpoint, we are preparing for it to land in this upcoming fiscal year.
So that's the only, anybody else have any questions? If not,
Don't bring up tariffs. So the other caveat to this, Dane was making a joke over here, but we did just get a letter from our biggest supplier of electric equipment, power line supply, who is always very competitive. The tariffs are gonna impact us. These projects may not come to fruition if the material costs, and it's not on Zach, it's not on anybody that prepared the quotes. The quotes that Zach, and estimates that he's prepared are very detailed down to, I want to say nuts and bolts, because those are minor material, but not much higher than nuts and bolts. But there's a lot of speculation on pricing. I will say, the estimate form that we always build in a 10% contingency. I'm not sure 10% contingency is gonna cover what we need from a material standpoint, but there's also a labor piece, and the guys are pretty good about getting jobs done. So there will be fluidity this year, potentially, in the capital budget. And it may be, and we've got some plans. Zach has a very detailed thought process on, and we've talked quite a bit about staging jobs, and there's gonna have to be, with this much included in the capital budget, there's certain things that can happen concurrently, there's certain things that have to happen sequentially. So there's a big undertaking. Zach's done a great job trying to lay out goals on a quarterly basis and trying to stage work, so throughout the year, we're constantly busy, but I guess I bring that up because we may have a few irons in the fire. And if the tariffs really impact things, we may just have to push some of these out a little bit further into next fiscal year. The hope is we don't have to, but we've got a busy year when it comes to the capital budget for sure. And it's gonna, tariffs aren't gonna make it any easier.
No. Okay. Any other questions? I would, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the final draft and to send it on to city council.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. On to our June board meeting.
All right, so Perry and I have had some conversations. The June board meeting falls again this year. Sorry, didn't mention driving that nuts.
Well, I got it. It's on the wrong thing.
The June board meeting falls when I'm gonna be in New Orleans at the MPPA National Conference. And last year, we really wanted to just move forward with the board meeting as is. Perry and I were in San Diego. This year, the June board meeting, the board is going to face a very major decision point on the state's EWR program. And it's a multi-year commitment. So Perry and I talked, and we thought it would be best to have that meeting and have that discussion with maximum level of participation, which would result in, or would require that we push the board meeting out to a different date. So it's Perry and I's recommendation to move the June board meeting. If we did propose a date, but my thought initially would be to push it out to the following Tuesday. But I didn't want to be presumptuous and assume that all Tuesdays work for everybody.
So and I had thought about this and I didn't share it with you. So that 17th is that Tuesday. I also would like to call another board meeting sometime, and maybe we can do it together, but I rather not. I rather just have it focused sometime between the 23rd and the 26th. That's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, to do a general manager's evaluation. And I'd like to, again, get that done before the July 1. And again, I don't know what everybody's schedules are, and I haven't, whether you think, I just think doing your evaluation and we come in and like we've done before and we do it, that's the only thing. We don't have to rush through anything, and so therefore, I'm more comfortable, I don't know about, and I'm just one person, so the rest of the board, is, you know, having our board meeting the 17th, which is that Tuesday, and then, having a special meeting, and it can be because it's the fourth Monday, it can be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we certainly don't want it to be a Friday.
Can I mix that Thursday, the
Yep.
26th?
So either the 23rd, 24th, or 25th, that Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
I say 17th for the regular board meeting and 24th for a special meeting.
Is everybody good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Put in the game real quick.
17th,
24th.
push out the regular.
Wait a minute.
17th and then the next.
17th and 24th.
I will not be here the 17th.
I understand that. She's going to Iceland.
24th, I'm out. The 17th, I find a babysitter, but potentially do that.
I'll bring the kids. That'd be great. Hey, it wouldn't be probably, it'd be the quickest board meeting ever.
Does the Monday, the 24th work, or 23rd work?
I can't tell. I don't know. No, Lauren's gone, so I'm probably on kid duty that day too. 16th is open for the Monday.
So I will, the only thing I'll add is, hey, literally, you saw me on the phone getting updated information on the EWR program. The only decision that would have to be made next month is, do we participate in the state program or not? I think Tina, you had asked me during last month, you know, where are you meeting? What do you recommend? It was up in the air. This is fresh off the press type of opinion, not fully realized, a lot more digging, but initial indications would say the MPPA program may be a better option than the state program, especially from an economic standpoint. There's other considerations as far as compliance, but I don't think the conversation will be as heavy as I thought it was last month, or I thought it would be 2 hours ago. So
Oh, really?
if it were, I mean, it's not a good conversation, still. It's gonna be very, very expensive, but I can't say where. Yeah, and I don't know if the state's program is going, I think it's less likely now that the state's program is the route that will be my recommendation. Ultimately, it's the board's decision, but so what I'm bringing up is I don't think that conversation will be as lengthy as if if that was the most viable option, then we were gonna need to vet that pretty deeply, and I don't necessarily think that's gonna be the case. So if you wanted to try and cram both of them in, and we could have staff leave, or if there's, it's the board's call, but I don't know how long that normal meeting would be at this point. There will be some action items. Health insurance will have to get voted on. That rate increase is not a great rate increase, but again, I initially didn't see good viable alternatives. So it might be a tough pill to swallow, but I'm not sure there's going to be a really deep conversation when you're trying to pick between multiple bad options.
Yes.
So just my 2 cents on kind of what that meeting, that normal June meeting is kind of shaping up to be. But again, historically, in the past, we've had that special call meeting, and that special call meetings worked well. So I'll defer to the board.
I mean, for me, I'm probably pretty comfortable not being here for that decision. As long as someone my thoughts on that. The general manager would like to be here.
Yes, I mean, I just didn't know. Now I get it.
For the EWR,
Kind of discussion,
Yeah.
energy.
I'm less concerned about me not being here for that, but I'm more concerned about the general manager meeting if they're on separate days.
So what can,
My my current days on those, like towards the end of that month, are like the 16th, which is a Monday. Potentially
That's,
17th.
I will nix that because that is a, city council meeting.
Oh, or the next night, the 18th, I can cancel that, sir. It's not important. To win.
So I do the 17th and 18th.
We're gonna do them back to back, or just have one long meeting? Or are you wanting to have two separate meetings?
No, I don't wanna. Here's what I would propose. That we do that on the 17th. You can make the 17th?
I don't know. Lauren has a photo shoot.
Okay.
I'm assuming that I'm on kid duty.
Yeah.
But I could potentially get like family, but I can't tell you right now.
Right. I understand that.
And then the 18th, it's much easier. I just do a thing. And if we did them both on the 18th, that's fine by me. If the EWR thing kind of comes down and it's not much of a discussion. I'm personally comfortable doing them both on the same day. I spend a little bit more time on the general manager meeting, but.
So my question to you, because I don't want to slight either meeting. So we'd have the EWI thing, EWR. There's just too many acronyms in the power company. And then can we then pare down the information?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, provide them, but we don't need to have
Absolutely.
discussions on them.
We did that a couple months ago when Pat was here. Ask questions, we'll move on. So we can, so the action items that it looks like are shaping up is we, every June have to do, there's two pieces of routine business that we have to do. One's pick meeting dates for the following year. The other is the hard cap resolution. Those are pretty easy type things. Health insurance and then EWR, the health insurance and EWR, more of those one-off type decisions. They're gonna move fairly quick and then we can move through. I get, the last couple months have been heavy on one-off type information items. We can get to just a standard package of information that we usually hand out. And we can, if there are questions, we can address questions. So that's, I would say that's up to you on how you want to approach that, but I'm more than comfortable pushing through some of that information items.
So the other is, I'm gonna ask, so that following week, the 23rd, is any of those, are you booked, are you?
The only day, Monday, Lauren has another photo shoot out of town. And Thursday, I currently don't have anything, but I don't.
But he's got something on Thursday,
So,
so.
the other 2 nights I'm out of.
So Tuesday and Wednesday you'd be able to?
No, 24th, 25th, I'm out.
Oh,
So the 23rd, the Monday, you think you might be able to.
Again, I'd have to find babysitter and ensure that it would work.
The reason why I'm asking
Yeah.
is because then Tina will be back from Iceland. She gets back that Friday, and then she can participate in the one meeting. So I've got the information. Charlie and I will talk about it and see what works, and we'll set the meeting. And we'll send that out to everybody. And again, it's the regular board meeting, the things that we have to do, and then, a review of the general manager.
I'm good with having one long meeting, and we've done it before, we can do it again. That's
Every month.
Okay. We'll figure it out and get back to
Sure.
you.
Yeah, so
No,
no,
I have the 10th. Why?
I'm sorry.
I worked so hard to leave it to the.
Let's, move it let's just move it
To
to,
17?
no, we'll move it, the meeting to New Orleans.
Yeah.
Let's move it to New Orleans.
Orleans.
Okay.
Sounds easy.
Sounds easy.
Yeah, the time that I'm out of town, so everybody will go to New Orleans.
Okay,
Right, on to the,
let me just back up 1 second. So everybody is good with moving it a week out. We just have to, we'll just finalize the date
Absolutely,
and send
just
that
let me know.
back to everybody.
Your best dates are 18th. The 25th? No, all right.
yeah,
No,
all right, cool.
I'll write it down.
Okay.
All right, you move on to.
Informational items.
All right, so we're gonna start with the MISO claim reserve auction review. So I'll hand this over to Casey, to run the show, but this is a little background. Each year, the planning reserve auction, the planning reserve auction is really the capacity auction. It's a process that ensures there's enough electric supply to meet peak customer demands while maintaining grid reliability. So what they, essentially how they market it, but it's when things get heavily loaded, are there enough resources to meet the needs that the electric grid demands? Complicated process. There's some new things this year, but I'm just gonna hand it over to Casey and let him run with it.
All right,
There you go.
love acronyms.
Yeah.
We got a lot of acronyms. So, yeah, like Charlie was saying, it's basically the supply demand, supply being generation of resources, demand being load, and consumers of power. You can go to the next slide. So, results, from the auction, and just kind of the reacclimate, you with everything. So the MISO maps over there on the left, I kind of split up the north central zone from the south zone because there's limited transferability between those two zones. So they kind of analyze them separately, but as a whole. And then also it's been 3 years now that we've been on the seasonal construct where it used to be just an annual evaluation for the peak of summer. But now with renewable resources and how they vary per season, solar, wind, they went to the seasonal design. So that's why you see the summer, fall, winter, spring. And so we're zone 7, obviously, and you can see summer is extremely elevated compared to the other seasons. And that's basically that price indicates the limited supply of generation compared to the expected load, peak load in that season. So just some highlights. We're down here. Surplus capacity in the summer has reduced from approximately 6.5 gigawatts in 2023, 4.6 gigawatts in 24, and 0.6 gigawatts in 25. So there's this trend of reduced capacity every year. We're losing capacity, and that's what's driving up that price, specifically in the summer.
The only other thing I want to just touch on here is just for context. There's 2 different units, I guess, price indicators that they provide, and it's a little bit of a challenge because our bilateral agreements are in kW months. MISO does everything in megawatt days. There's a simple conversion factor, but just for context, the annualized number at $2 or $217 a megawatt day, annualized, that equates to about $6.50 a kW month, which is about where market transactions are. This is the first year that the planning reserve auction actually produced results that were kind of in alignment with the market. And that's a reflection, a change of the methodology this year. We won't get into, I don't think you get into any of those details, do we? But you really, you see that stark difference between summer and spring. That summer number is higher than the cost of new entry. It's higher than any cone value in the past, and that did not clear at the cost of new entry, which is the cap that a resource can clear, or the capacity can clear at. But you start to see that we're, like I said, we're transacting annually for bilateral capacity in the $6 to $7 a kW month market, which very much lines up with that annual. But if you look at that spring number, is about $2 a kW month, so way under, about $2. The winter is about $1 a kW month, and then the fall is about $3 a kW month. You jump to the summer, that's $20 a kW month. So you're starting to really see some of those price differentiations from season to season to reflect that supply demand relationship.
But just a quick question. Going from 6.5, 4.6 to 2.6, is it because, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking it's twofold. One is there's more end users of electricity, more homes are being built, more of this, and also that there's less, you know, we're cutting back on coal plants and we're cutting, so is it a common, are we producing less? Are we?
I love this question. I'm sorry, I'm not, this tees up every.
Every time I'm up here, you predict the future.
Well, it's so, I'm just looking at it. There's a lot, because when I read that, it's just on, oh, okay, we're not making as much. Well, you know, but there's more users. So to me, again, I need the engineer to jump into my brain and say, yeah, you're moving towards, you know, so there's more electricity being used and there's less being produced.
Yes, we will.
I was gonna say, that's, sorry for the spoiler alert, if anybody wanted to get to the punchline before it was, but yeah, that's the gist of the entire presentation.
Is it back?
Sorry.
Is
No,
it-
it's great because we talk, Paige and I, we talk about this, it's, you know, what's important to the board. This is a conversation that, you know, it takes subject matter experts at MPPA to navigate the planning reserve auction and really understand intricacies and how everything moves together. So when we are meeting and saying, hey, how do we find the right message for the board? What's relevant to the board to understanding the landscape? What's important to the board to understanding future decisions that we make? You heard Pat talk about capacity. You hit the nail on the head when it's a supply demand relationship.
Is it, Charlie, is it possible they just got that much better at estimating the capacity and usage over, as they've used this for now for a couple of years, and say, hey, we don't need to produce as much because we have running at a 6.5 surplus. We don't need to have that much surplus because it costs me. So therefore, I'm going to reduce the surplus. Any thought that somebody's
No.
smarter than us?
Uh,
Think about it.
We'll, the next slide, we'll
Okay.
kind of fill in that.
Because the other piece to think about is there's energy and capacity.
Right.
It doesn't cost us much of anything to have those units out there, but they're worth a lot just to sit there. So there's not very much variable operating expenses associated with capacity, some capacity resources. And the only time a lot of resources are, especially capacity related resources, are deployed is when they're economically dispatched from an energy perspective. But yeah, that capacity side, you know, how much energy we produce doesn't determine the capacity on those two units. So if they are shut down for an entire year, as long as we meet the requirements, which actually involves not shutting them down for a full year, but you know, they're still have that value. They're still there, so they don't actually have to produce anything to get that capacity accreditation.
It's a year.
Once a year you have to run.
Yeah, that's approved. Yeah, there's the phone. Yeah. Next slide, please. All right, so, we're gonna talk about the supply. Like Perry said, supply, demand, what's moving, both things are moving. Basically this chart, we're gonna run through the math and the transition over the past year. So 2024 offers, this was the supply last year, 140.7 gigawatts. And we'll kind of go through additions, subtractions, and eventually wind up over here, but large increase in solar capacity. And then we had a little bit of an increase in wind capacity.
From existing
From
resources.
existing, yeah, sorry. So existing resources, they're always, I guess, being evaluated from a capacity perspective. How often do they run? How much do they produce? So existing wind resources had an increase in accreditation. There's also decreases in capacity accreditation of existing resources, mainly in gas and coal. Could have been, some units didn't perform as well as they should have, or they were at reduced capacity because they, planned
Planned outages too with the new structure.
Yep.
If you've got a very lengthy planned outage, you can.
to lose your accreditation
Yeah.
for that season. Suspensions and retirements. So, the majority of these are coal, so coal facilities shutting down. And, external resources, small 0.9, change there, but overall, as you can see, we had additions, we had increases, we had decreases in retirements of, different assets, but we overall lost, capacity in the MISO footprint. So, supply is being reduced. We can go to the next slide. And then here is your demand. Here is your forecasted load. And this is starting in 2014 to kind of give you a snapshot of some historical data all the way to summer, projected summer of 2025. So, basically, there's some ebbs and flows of COVID and whatnot in the middle there, but they're projecting a increase from last summer to this summer on the demand side. So you have supply being reduced, demand increasing, and that is why in the summer you have such a higher value on capacity.
And haven't we gotten lucky, at least over the past few years, with some of the forecasts being pretty high, and then we looked out and didn't actually hit those forecasts?
I'd say we've had a couple mild summers, but I can't really.
I would say, I don't think,
Yeah.
and the thing with the auction is each year, it's a standalone auction, so it's a new calculation every year. There's no need, I guess, to reconcile against the past, obviously, there's lessons learned from the past. Yeah. But each year is its own, and the other piece of this is this includes a planning reserve margin. So it's not just, hey, let's meet our need. Right. And that margin could change it does change year over year, how much headroom you have over your offers to what clears the market.
And I'll say, last year was our local Lowell's largest peak ever last summer.
Okay.
Local, so that was. I guess we can go to the next slide, please. So overall, this is the trend for that summer clearing price that we talked about. So summer 2025, they're at $666.50. And this is just kind of some more historical data to show you what's happened in the past, And in the past, their old methodology was causing this effect here where, 1 year was okay, slightly elevated, extreme, kind of urgency and concern and price fluctuations, back down to stable, extreme, fluctuation, back down. So what they're trying to do with this new methodology is
Make it way more stable.
smoothly.
I think what you'll see over time is from the old system used to be basically driven by the summer.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing that 666 is the summer number, and it's high because you're offset by some of the lower. But yeah, I mean, it was based on summer. The old calculations were based on summer.
All based on something.
Yeah, this whole thing's been based on summer. But what I think you will see is more consistent price signals come out of the auction, and that will allow for more certainty in the future to make investments in capacity resources.
So can you explain a little bit of exactly what is the auction? I mean, like, again, is it inflated? Is the auction manipulating prices and who's?
Auctions is a tough work, because it's not like you go in and go, yeah, I'll buy that for 50, no, I'll get it for 60, no, I'll get it for 70.
Well, that's what I meant.
It's not, and I get where you're coming, it's not that at all. I don't know if you've got a good way to pare it down.
So, all, the entire MISO footprint, you have independent generation producers, so Consumers Energy, or I don't know, any of the other, other, front of the meter, large coal, nuclear, gas, wind, solar. So, they're all basically offering up their power at a certain price. So we'll produce our power at this much of a cost, or they're basically, how much does our fuel cost? They have labor components, so they're willing to produce 1 gigawatt for this much money. And then everybody just kind of bids in and makes that offer based on their economics, their fuel source, their labor costs. And ultimately you end up with this pool of power, pool of capacity at a certain price point. And, some people, coal's very inexpensive. So you'll have a lot of base load coal, and then you'll have more expensive, I can't speculate on how much natural gas costs in each state, nuclear, but basically everybody kind of throws in their cost, their price point for their power, and that's how they build their graphs on supply versus demand, and how much does that power, what's the value of that power based on everybody's cost to produce that power.
And it's calculation more than anything. There's a lot of inputs. What's the peak? What are the resources? So in auction is, I don't honestly know why they call it an auction. But
It's kind of like they're bidding to sell, not bidding to buy, bidding to sell.
yeah, and
A different.
then whatever the clearing price is ultimately where short and long positions are settled up. So if we do have approximately a 2 megawatt long position at that $666 a megawatt day, so call it $1,300 and change a day for our long position. Those that are short pay that price. And MISO is a not-for-profit, or maybe a non-profit, they're a non-profit, not-for-profit something. But so any money they collect through deficiency capacity charges, they distribute to those that are long. So it's a balancing act. between those load serving entities, utilities that bring more to the grid than they need, balances that with the load serving entities that don't bring enough to the grid. If we happen to meet our planning reserve margin exactly, then this auction doesn't necessarily impact us, but there's always a balancing and there's always a reconciliation of who's long versus who's short. This is the process that determines the value of those long and short positions. It's a complicated structure.
And each generation of resources treated differently. I'll say it's, solar has different accreditation based on the seasons, so is wind. So it's not like a one for every single resource.
It's just, so. The name, the auction, just throws me off, because it's like, okay, there's a whole bunch of people bidding and trying to
Yeah.
raise,
Right.
trying to raise the price of the power and.
No, and I get exactly
Yeah,
what you
it's
said.
a reverse auction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, and it's not, an auction implies a human element.
Yeah.
And this is very much a process driven, not emotion driven. That's probably a better way. Auctions are driven by emotions.
Yeah.
And that's why charity auctions always occur late in the evenings. But, this doesn't have the emotions tied to it that you typically think of with an auction. It's very much a process. This is the process we go through, and these are the results that are the outcome of, or the byproduct of that process.
Yeah, and to point something you came up with, MISO is just the air traffic controllers. They're just kind of managing the finances, managing electrons, where they need to be, and what generation resources can take outages or can't take outages based on regional needs. So MISO is just,
I don't know if that's a good evaluation right at the moment.
no,
I-
but
No, it's not.
Because you don't want to fly to Newark.
but they just kind of manage it. They don't own it. They just manage it.
Direct.
Direct.
How about they're an orchestrator or a conductor. Conductor of conductor doesn't actually play an instrument, but they wave their hands a lot.
Right.
So if natural gas is, I'm at the auction and I'm auctioning off 200 megawatts of power, they have to supply that? Okay, that's their guarantee.
Yeah.
They're committing to that, okay.
Right.
Step at that price over.
And I'll sell you that power at $50 a megawatt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capacity, yeah.
You're committed.
Okay.
Any other question, Tracy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions when we get down to this report.
Okay. I didn't know they
I'm
evaluated.
not going to stand on this report.
All right, then we'll jump into the next, actually the next item is the MMEA Community Impact Study. So last month we reviewed kind of our local results. Wanted to anybody that was there in the morning saw this video. You have, this is what MMEA Commission was a big part of participating in driving this, I guess. So not planning on reviewing this in total. This is something that we produced though, really as an advocacy tool. So that Katie Abraham, Executive Director of MMEA. You're gonna have to have volume, don't I?
Yeah.
You need to hear.
I got it.
Yeah, we got it.
But this is the ultimate report that came out. This is an advocacy tool that we've shared with state legislatures. We're going to carry it to Washington DC next year. But it really highlights the value that public power represents to Michigan. And start with this, the only number I'll highlight is in 1 year, Michigan, through reliability and through rate savings, saved public power customers over $400 million. That's a really big number, and there's similar numbers year over year over year. So Thought we'd just play this video. It's about it's 4.5 minutes long. Not intending to really dive into this much, but if you take a look at it, want to follow up with me, please do so. Sorry you have to look at me in the video.
MMEA, or Michigan Municipal Electric Association, represents all 40 of the state's municipally owned electric utilities. Those are also known as public power utilities. MMEA commissioned a community benefit study that focuses specifically on the value that public power provides.
As utilities, we eat, sleep, and breathe public power, so we're very familiar with the value proposition. But to actually quantify it and put cumulative numbers together from all the various value streams to really show our customers and to support our story that we know so well leaves a lasting impression.
The ICE calculator, or the interruption cost estimate calculator, is a tool that we are using to estimate the cost of an outage.
Nothing moves without electricity, right? When the electricity is out, everything stops. Grocery store, there's production, it's the entire economy stops.
So our study found that public power utilities in Michigan have significantly fewer and shorter outages than investor-owned utilities, which translates to huge savings for our customers. $252 without major events, and then over $1,300 with major events. When we have a major event, it usually takes down wires, it can take down poles, and it takes more manpower to go and restore that infrastructure. If we stretch this data out, the savings are tremendous. We're seeing about $100,000 in savings over the course of a lifetime of a resident that lives in a public power community in Michigan.
One of the great things about public power is we're part of the communities that we serve.
Our workers are from the community. They know when the lights go out. They're there. They can respond. And so that's a tremendous benefit to public power.
Our sole purpose is essentially to serve our customers. Rates are set so that we can reinvest back into the electric system, and that's a return on investment to our customers.
Our study found that public power utilities in Michigan have the lowest residential rates out of any other electric provider in the state. It's a 22% savings on average for our residential customer. That translates to a little bit over $270 per customer per year. And then that translates to over $20,000 in savings over the course of the customer's lifetime. And I would say that that's because we are public power utilities. There are no shareholders in the public power model. Our customers pay the true cost of service. When we take the reliability data and the rates data and we put them together, we are seeing an annual savings of over $400 million for Michigan residents and businesses in public power communities in just 1 year. Over the course of a public power customer's lifetime, you get $120,525 in savings.
A lot of families are struggling, and this is just an added way that we can get back to them while still supplying them with reliable, cost-effective power.
We serve a very diverse customer group, so that savings is something that we take a lot of pride in. Is ultimately an enabling factor.
These savings really translate to a better quality of life in Michigan, greater buying power, and just making these communities in Michigan a more attractive place to live. My hope for this study is that our legislators, local governing bodies, they take this study and it gives them a tool to see the value that we provide for the citizens of Michigan and to ensure that we're able to maintain our ability to govern at that local level and continue to do what we've been doing so well for over 100 years.
Very good.
Yeah, I didn't realize your eyes were that blue until they got that close up, how blue they were, that blue shirt you had on.
Oh, that was the makeup.
No, you can't do that with your eyes. They were blue.
I thought it was a really good video, just so, the board is aware. I talked to the mayor. One of the things that we're planning is probably the second meeting, city council meeting in June, or as soon as the AV project is done over there. I know they're working on that. I think that's been a challenge to get somebody to come in and do that project, but.
Yes.
I think they're wrapping it up or have plans to wrap it up at this point.
I don't even know if they started. You're talking about the new sound system and projector stuff?
last week.
Well, I'm saying, I thought, well, the intention will be, and there's some alternative plans, but would like to, highlight this video for city council, share our local numbers, and then touch on, some other light and power recognition, but want to do that in June, really get this information out there. And then we'll follow up with, after that, we'll follow up with the Ledger and have them, or see if they're willing to write an article kind of based on some of these impact studies. And then we'll launch into a more broad coordinated communication effort, but letting that council meeting and that audience be a little bit of a launching point. But we have a meeting set up internally to talk through a more holistic communication strategy. Where should this be? How do we, Perry, you've got some ideas that will be incorporated into our internal discussions, but we want to just make sure that we're not just winging it in terms of how we throw this information out there. We'd like it to be part of a coordinated effort to communicate this. So. Cool. All right, we'll roll on. The next item, the 2025 MPPA business and credit. I knew this was going to happen last month. I highlighted that this data was a little bit older, but MPPA was working on expediting this process. In my memo, again, these are big things that don't change rapidly. So I highlight some of the changes in the overall score, but include some of the drivers and the changing the score. But at the end of the day, according to this report and based on this report, we're in a really stable position, which also aligns with the S&P surveillance review. In your board packet, I did also include a copy of the S&P surveillance review. So if you want to read through that, you can see how, I think last month we talked about, some of the weighting, and I was not sure on exactly what the alignment was weighting from MPPA to S&P. They've made some tweaks to the weighting of individual components, but if you look at that report and read through the S&P surveillance review, you can see those parallels and how MPPA has tried to align their methodology with S&P's methodology. Happy to answer any questions, but we just talked about this last month, so this is just new data. And then there's not a memo in here. I want to provide an update on PA 229. So I was really hoping that we would have, actually, as Perry, some of us, I was on the phone with MPPA up till about 5 minutes before the meeting started, trying to get the latest and greatest on this. Still don't have anything super concrete. What I can say is we've got to peek under the hood a little bit. Their MPPA has quite a bit of vetting to do before we should really make any of that information public, but it does appear that there's going to be some compelling reasons to participate in the MPPA program. But in order to design a program, MPPA put out a RFP or RFI, and it was RFI and an RFP process to solicit external companies that would be able to stand up a program that complied with PA 229. They had a lot of initial interest, and then when it came to actual proposals, the quantity of proposals was not real high. The state has started we have some information on the state's program that they're calling Efficiency United, ran through a company called Clear Results. Again, don't have any definitive numbers, but I do believe there will be some compelling reasons to continue our relationship or continue to utilize our strategy of partnering with MPPA for PA 229 compliance purposes. But again, as an update, if we are going to participate in the state's program, we have to provide the state with our intent before July 1. And it is a 2-year commitment with the state. From an economic standpoint, I anticipate the state's program will be significantly higher than the MPPA program.
So just, so we're looking at either the state or
MPPA.
MPPA. We're not going it alone.
No, so, and I should clarify more details. There are pieces that so right now, the way our program works, which is a voluntary program, commercial industrial tends to flow through MPPA which ultimately flows to Franklin Energy Partners. They are Franklin Energy, may not be partners, but they do all the calculations of that. We also have a set of residential programs that Lisa manages. I don't know how much flexibility we will have with the new MPPA program. The new legislation may create a situation where we just don't have that flexibility to run certain things in-house. But the short answer is no. I would not attempt to run this program out of our office with our staff. It would be incredibly burdensome on numerous staff. The admin fees are not going to be cheap for either program. So there's going to be a lot of administrative type fees, but from a skill set and best use of time type of, I'd rather use Casey's skill set from an engineering perspective on things that bring more value to the utility. I struggle with this program because it's potentially 5% equivalent of a 5% rate increase. So we're going to make customers' bills 5% less affordable so that a subsection of those customers can get paid for savings that they were probably going to do already. This program is very burdensome. I'll remind you all that 25% of our overall budget has to go to low income. So if it's a $500,000 program, we have to spend $125 a year on a very small subsection of our residential, which is already a small percentage of our revenue, a smaller percentage of our revenue. So there's some very challenging math behind this because you're also supposed to avoid cross subsidization of classes. So there's a lot of landmines associated with this law. But the simple answer is no, we're not going to do it. I don't have, I'm going to check my notes just real quick. Yeah, I should, MPPA strategy, if they're going to pull together a comparison that we'll be able to share with the board. And as soon as I have that comparison, I will email it out, send you all a text message, let you know it's in your inbox. I'll try to summarize in a memo, but want to get that information from you all as soon as possible. That way we're as prepared as possible for a conversation and decision in June. But this timeline is very problematic. We've told the state this has been problematic from the get-go. MPPA is still getting new information almost on a daily basis, and PSC is charged with regulating this. And this program all programs involve a lot of legislative interpretation by the PSC, and that in of itself is a challenge that it's not clear. So more to come next month, and hopefully quite a bit more to come in the interim between now and next month. All right, now we're down to the meat and potatoes of it. I'm not going to touch on much of anything in performance data. I'm happy to answer questions, but these graphs are things that you see every month, and now we're 10 months into the fiscal year, reporting on 10 months. So I'm going to just keep rolling down. I'll pause at cash just briefly. Cash is very stable, but as you look at that and you look at our recommendation ultimately, which was supported by the board, eating into our cash reserve just a little bit to fund our capital budget. You can start to see why we're in a position that the budget is able to support that, and our cash reserve are able to support that. Like I said, happy to answer any questions, but we saw a little uptick in the PCA, which we very much expected to see because it was very low last month, and we do anticipate that to ramp up through the summer months. Any questions on performance data? We'll move on to the income statement. Good. Happy to answer any questions. A lot of trends that just continue. Revenue is up largely. A lot of that's attributed to working capital recovery. Other than that, it was a negative net income month, which with the very low PCA doesn't surprise me. If you look at just the raw dollars of what we collect in some months, it's north of $50,000-$60,000 just in PCA revenue. Last month that dipped to 16-ish. So negative net, we budget for and plan for negative net income months every year, and this happens to be one, but we ultimately still sit in a very healthy position from a financial perspective, and sitting really close to where we sat last year at this time, very close. Any questions on performance data? All right, then we'll go to the outage report. I'm gonna hand it over to Zach.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. There was no outage. Sorry. No outages last month. Zach threw me for a loop. I thought I might have forgot the report. He told me that we didn't have an outage last month. So
We'll pause for a second for Zach report.
I stand by the report. Thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll move. Yeah, moving on to he threw me for a loop. I saw the report is the capital projects.
Oh. Sorry, you,
Oh, no, I was just joking. No, I was just joking. My bad. Bad joke.
no, what you said were, and that concludes informational data or
Oh,
performance data. You said that concludes performance data. So I zoomed past capital projects.
yeah, so I shouldn't have to talk too much. You can see regular progression working through our standard projects, some IT stuff, continue to fund the capital plans, continue to fund the vehicle replacement fund, work over, you've noticed and seen the crews, they've been over on the east side. So I'm working on that voltage conversion, and then the facility improvements are associated with paying for the floor, the paint, and some of the work that we've had done down here. That's capital projects. Any questions? Cool. Now it's on to Zach's actual report.
Yes, and love report.
Any questions for Zach? Casey, I don't think you're getting away. Sounds like I'm staying on your report, so.
Let's hear it, Barry.
Okay, hang on. So when you, how many times a year, so, say, okay. Generation, we did not operate the generators this past month. So when you don't, operate, when you're not called to run them, do you have to fire them up every once in a while and make sure the oil's going through it and all that kind of stuff? I mean, so how many, when you say, we didn't run them this last, I'm assuming we didn't run them. We didn't get called to run them, but did they get cranked over or what?
Yeah, so typically we'll do at least like quarterly exercises of them where we actually fire them up, pull them up, and operate them for a couple hours. This winter's been really quiet, so we haven't had to. And typically in the winter we have duct covers that we install to help reduce the cold air from
Right.
cooling down the entire generation room and the generator itself. So we kind of winterize the unit. So once we put these insulated panels up and things like that, we don't take them down unless we have to.
Right.
Springtime, now is usually when we test run them before June. Usually June is, late May, early June is when you'll get a heat wave, the first heat wave, and you'll have some elevated prices and some concerns of grid stability warnings and things like that. But yeah, typically quarterly we operate them and actually load them up and everything.
Okay.
So the last time we operated was this winter. It was really cold. Didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah, so he said we don't run in the winter very often, but from a confidence standpoint, it's kind of a tough spot for Casey to be in. He's got, it's more challenging to operate these in the extremes. So extreme heat has its own challenges. Extreme cold has its own challenges. We did have a max gen event on the 3rd with Zach and Casey both got to experience that one, but we had quite a bit of, what year was it? 23, yeah. So December 23rd, 2023 was a max gen event when it was very cold. And Casey and Zach came in to operate them, and we had some trouble getting them fired up. I think they would have worked through them, but the event terminated before we hit our true response time that we had to hit. So, but it brought to light some challenges in operating in the extreme. So this past winter, when we got down to some really cold temperatures, Casey operated them and hit a new output peak.
I was gonna say, didn't we get some new data from that, from when that happened? Yes. Okay. Yep.
Okay, number C, and maybe you don't want to share that
Oh, I'm
name.
talking on this one. Point Broadband. Point Broadband sold our static IP address without telling us and shut down everything that operated and leveraged that static IP address. And it's been a nightmare working with them and getting it stood back up. So I won't put Casey in a position to badmouth somebody publicly, but I'll happily do it.
So are we, what's the resolution? Are we looking at a different provider or is there another provider?
There are, but not sure they're any better. We are working with IP Consulting. For one, Casey last Friday worked with IP Consulting to move to our new static IP address. So everything has been converted to the new address and stood back up. So we have a static IP that they've assigned us and we pay for. So they shouldn't do this again. So we shouldn't run into shouldn't. There's been a lot of shouldn'ts that did happen though through this process. They shouldn't sell that or move that towards us. But at the same time, we're also looking at all additional carriers. The area, there are 3 providers, Point Broadband, Comcast, and AT&T that will provide a 1 gig fiber to the premises service. So we have a redundant ISP or internet provider into our main office. We're also going to look at beefing up that connection and having a true failover internet connection. That's a pretty involved process to have certain failovers move to a different firewall, different internet service provider. But long term, we're looking at how do we become more resilient, because of all 3 providers, none of them are reliable enough to be our sole provider.
So I had, when Point Broadband was in putting fiber underground, going across people's property, they're getting it from the county map or whatever. And again, I showed them or proved to the city and to Dan Zarnacki that they were on my property. So I've had issues with Point Broadband. Are they using or renting any poles from us? Are they above ground? Are they all underground or?
They are on some of our poles, yes.
Okay.
And they have a contract to be there.
So I understand that, but there's also a time when contracts are not indefinite.
We have challenges with that because of certain state laws that we can't discriminate against
Oh,
different.
but they can sell something out from underneath us?
Oh, trust me, Barry,
Yeah.
it's been an interesting it's been very interesting in our office. Casey deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the BS,
Patience.
yeah, for the BS he's dealt with. I don't have anything good to say outside of there have been certain individuals that we've worked with at Point Broadband that have been very helpful. They've been very difficult to find. But once we've found them, we have found some individuals that actually care about the world. But as a company, they have major issues with something. Not my job to figure it out, but their techs that came on site to troubleshoot a problem were not aware that the company sold our static IP address.
Yeah, I'd say just complete incompetence and negligence is a good summary of.
It's either apathetic negligence or total lack of competency.
Yeah.
Or both. I think it's a combination of both.
Do we know who I mean, there are other companies that were affected by this too. And like, how wide ranging was it? And is it worth, I don't know, entering into a class action situation and like?
No.
No.
We don't know how wide it was. But, okay, we'll just say, we looked out every avenue for who regulates them and there's not, Casey had some conversations with PFT, the FCC.
Wow.
So we tried to do everything we could to,
In a legal matter.
but yeah, obviously legal. We tried to utilize every means of recourse that we had available to us and they just aren't there. Yeah,
Thank you.
and really, yeah, to quantify damages is very difficult outside of it. And
Yeah.
we don't have much, unfortunately. They have the ability to do that and. Yeah. Okay,
That's all. That's the questions I had.
all right. Megan, she's not been in the office. She doesn't have a clue what's going on, but.
Nope, I surely,
You have a report now.
my name is on this, so I stand on it.
Thank you, Megan.
All right, roll on. Julie has been absolutely a rock star for the last month or two. Two more, two now. So obviously this was not, there's more going on in the office by all means, but a lot of what's going on in the office is getting the routine work done to, we call it the glass balls. Everybody's juggling glass, you're either juggling glass balls or a combination of glass balls and rubber balls. Rubber balls bounce, glass balls don't. The office is focused very much on those mission critical tasks right now.
And this has nothing to do with the report, except I see per day. Are we, 2 years in a row, we've done the tree thing. Are we doing the tree this year or not?
Last year we talked about maybe not do, I'm not sure. We haven't made the determination yet because we know that at some point we're either gonna hit the same people over and over and over, or we're just gonna exhaust the customers that are interested. Ideally, we could do fewer amount of trees and spread it out over more years, but Arbor Day Foundation has made some concessions on the typical minimum to include us in the program. So we're really below critical mass for them, but.
Okay, I just, I see that, it just pops in my head.
I can tell you the tree that my neighbor planted on the corner of my property and his, it's coming along nicely.
All right, great. So I've got two that both of them have
It's
leafed
thriving
out.
out there.
Neither of them are dead. One of them's 2 years old.
Yay.
All right. My report, I want to highlight that I've mentioned it. I'll be in New Orleans for the national conference.
I mentioned the IT issue, talked about. Oh, gave you the insurance update, not trying to get in, cybersecurity training will be issued tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. And just like other months, it'll stay open until the day after the June board meeting, which I'll need to talk with Lisa about adjusting that day once we remember, or once we land on a day. I know there were some things I promised in here. Well, the low income program, I knew I was gonna provide an update on. Other than that, I did want to make the board available that we were approached by a grant writing, really a turnkey company. And there's a potential that this is all happening really quick, so I haven't talked with Mike Burns yet. But we're gonna look at submitting a grant for deployment of community solar. It's moving really quick. It seems pretty unlikely that we'll receive funding, but the state has issued a pilot grant proposal this year, or grant opportunity this year. It would, if successful, we would deploy solar at zero cost to us. So our out-of-pocket expense would be $0.
I love that idea.
Yeah, who doesn't like free power?
And that would be, like local based.
Yes, so what I like.
I hear from people in the community all the time, we've got to put solar here, there, and the other. I'm like, look, we could do it, but I mean, well, they're over parking lots, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, fine, but we would not be serving our customers well to do this financially on our own. The only financially viable way to do this for our ratepayers is to buy it through the grid, unless
there's a grant. Yeah, so what we're looking at is, and again, this all happened quickly. But what I'm gonna propose to the city manager is that we look at doing parking lot canopy structures. To me, it's, the company we were working with wanted to look at some other vacant land, and I don't think there's much of a viable option elsewhere. There's opportunities for partnerships, and there's just not a lot of time from this grant cycle to pursue much. But we'd like to look at some of the city parking lots and the downtown footprint. That might be a benefit to the city to put some canopies over.
I'm hoping to have one in my big backyard if I can tap in.
There's some things that the program is designed to help low income. So a percentage of the array would have to go to be dedicated to low income customers, and those customers would have to realize a 20% overall bill savings. That's just a math formula we can solve for. But it's easy to make a project pencil when we don't pay for it. So other than that, it's really tough to make small scale solar pencil. It's far more expensive. You're looking at about $2.5 to $3 million a megawatt installed. And that produces power about, call it 25% of the year. So really, if you look at around the clock equivalent, it's closer to $10 million a megawatt. For comparison's sake, natural gas type generation, you're somewhere in the $1.75 to $2 million megawatt installed. So from an economic standpoint, these smaller scale projects can be tough to pencil, but there are a lot of programs out there. We tend not to have the ability to leverage those programs. This one is specifically geared towards community solar and municipals and co-ops. So,
any storage involved?
not in the pilot. The program does allow for some storage, but initially with the pilot, our thought is keep it simple and see if it works. The thing with the grant, and I think Jim a little bit from the city's perspective, it would definitely rely on, we have to leverage city property to locate it, but the grant application is non-binding. So if we submit for the grant and it ultimately is not a good fit for the city or not a good fit for somebody, there's no commitment in the actual grant submission. So we look at it as minimal effort with fairly unlikely to receive the funds, but also very, very minimal risk to us as a utility or to the city that we would have to leverage the property.
Does it hurt us that we are financially pretty good in the city? Is it more aimed at lower end communities that need the financial help?
I'm not
I'm not sure, because I know right now some of our ratings are because we don't get the grants because we are so, not
this.
wealthy, but we're all better off than most communities are financially.
I'm not
Okay,
familiar
that's
with
all right.
exactly how they're gonna score this. I think obviously we have to make sure we have low income customers that would benefit from it.
Right.
This program is geared towards
For
it,
that,
but
yeah.
I think an appropriately sized project works for any community regardless of the percentage that's low income versus non-low income. One thing I did want to highlight is Ryan. Everybody obviously knows Ryan. He's been here for 9 years, I believe. He celebrated his work anniversary in April and he officially retired May 2nd. So we wish him the best. We were not able to do a big celebration for him. He's over on the east side right now, spending a little bit of time over there. But when he gets back, I'm sure we will celebrate his awesome accomplishments, and we all owe Ryan quite a bit. He's left a lasting impact. So, and then I love every year I like highlighting Tom Russo's original anniversary.
Yeah.
1989. Tom still shows up a day a week.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, Ryan and Tom celebrated anniversaries. Yeah, and in the pictures, there's some. I'll be honest. I've seen some of these pictures from the ice storm. I've never seen ice like that. I defer to a lineman who has far more experience than me, but I saw pictures where wires were that big around. The wire was yay big, and the ice was over an inch thick on it.
You can see it on the one of that pole.
Yeah.
When you zoomed in, or not zoomed in on mine, you can see it on the very top, just so much.
Those pictures are 3-4 days after.
Yeah, because you can see that it's all
This
melting
is
down, there's icicles on it. and-
Yeah, this is
Okay.
3-4, mostly melted.
So what's the rule of thumb? I mean, isn't it like when it gets to a half inch of ice on a line is catastrophic?
Are we in a quarter-inch rating zone?
Yeah, I think like a quarter inch.
Yeah.
I think the zone we are rated for is a quarter inch.
Yeah.
But we were, whatever that threshold is, we were well. Yes.
What do you think?
I want to highlight, it's just real quick, this, safety training that we did. It was one of the best safety meetings that I participated in. It was pole top rescue, hurt man rescue, bucket truck rescue. We had the crew over from Portland, Tom from Mecca, actually conducted the training. Tom climbed with us, but we happened to land on, I think it landed on, or maybe the day before Lyman Appreciation Day. But we were gonna do our lunch here to celebrate our staff and the line workers that day. So the Portland crew was able to stick around, eat lunch. We brought in some Mexican food and had a good meal with everybody. So. I'm gonna hand it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. In your packet, you got the investments, benevolence, full income statement, and April payables. Our next regular board meeting will be determined, which again, Charlie and I will talk about it and get that out right away. And then, board council, Craig?
Thank you, Casey, for all the hard work that you've done on this IP address issue. Sorry you have to go through it, but thanks for being with us and doing the work and dealing with a crap situation. Zach, congratulations on a month with no outages. I mean, part of that means we're doing something right for the system and things aren't failing, so thank you to you and your crew. And in the office. I mean, as Charlie mentioned, I know there's much more going on there than was reported. Wish you guys all the best of luck in the world in dealing with, finding new providers for, software and such, and
Big fun.
and just overall, thank you for Ryan for his years of service and also to Tom. All right, that'll be it. Yes, thank you, everyone.
Congratulations to Tom and Ryan on their anniversary. Two of the nicer people I've ever met, especially in a field like this. Impressive people. And to Ryan in particular, it's really certainly earned his retirement. Hope he enjoys it. I also wanted to compliment Charlie and Perry on their matching outfits.
We coordinated.
Yeah.
I didn't notice, but I like it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Teresa dressed Perry.
I'll bet it a pair.
Although I seen her out walking this morning.
I'm sure the socks are good, but
Yeah, I got my camping socks already.
I don't have any sense. Jim.
I'm good tonight, thanks.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to meet Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan's first woman president. Her name's Trisha Keith. That was yesterday. And we had a little chit chat, and there was nobody. The only reason why she had time for me is because I actually was down there doing something else, and I ran into her and I said, "Oh my gosh, is there anybody down here talking to you?" And so I introduced myself, blah, blah, blah. And I brought up Lowell Light and Power, and she just was taken back. She said, "What?" So I told her about the meetings are televised and that I'm going to send her an email tomorrow and let her know when to look at when it's available, because she was kind of tickled that, of course, she did ask, do they have Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance? And I said, I said, we've got a good, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the union plan is a Blue Cross plan.
So, well, I told her, I says, well, we gotta, we're just kind of working on it and see what comes in. So, but she was pretty tickled, and I was thrilled to be able to have a personal conversation. So everybody give her a wave, because she's definitely gonna watch. So thank you, Lowell Light and Power crew and employees, because you guys really do carry the badge. Thank you.
Daniel.
Thanks for excusing my absence last month. Apologize for that. And for potentially considering my schedule in June. Yep. June is busy. Summer's busy. Other than that, happy to see some benevolence money going out. It's nice to see the different partners that we are contributing to. So that's all I have to say.
I really, well, thanks to Ryan and Tom, and I just thank everybody at Lowell Light and Power. So good organization, and everybody that I know of at Lowell Light and Power treats everybody else with respect and kindness. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Supported.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Charlie's got a
No,
single.
I'm just gonna stop the recording, so that's all I was doing.